So on this, you said something important. I think this whole, and this is why I bristle, especially if we're talking about mental health, if there's any insinuation of, hey, everybody, guess what? Now you need a whole new program to just generally feel better, because that makes people's brains go into the fetal position because life already feels so busy.
Yeah.
And there's a lot we're trying to do already. So when you throw a whole nother rigmarole on there that requires this consummate discipline, it's like and literally this part of the brain, back to this, the amygdala that I talked about, the primal brain goes into the fetal position because it's already kind of like, oh, like we're working so hard. And a lot of people are confused. They're like, man, when I was younger, I was so disciplined. What happened? I used to have so much willpower. And they really are hard on themselves. But what's happened is over life changes. Life gets busier.
Oh, yeah.
More ergs of energy required by this brain as we get older, and life gets more complex, and there's more responsibilities and people relying on us. And so if you add another thing on here that's really rigid in terms of discipline, you can be thwarted by your primal brain because it puts it into fight or flight. And so there are a lot of Jedi mind tricks that I certainly do on myself and I share with my clients. That's almost like tiptoeing. It's like befriending the amygdala and tiptoeing around it so you don't send it into that fight or flight that makes it even harder to try to do these things. And that's what really mindfulness and kind of self-compassion is about. So it's like evolution, not revolution. Take some steps in that direction to build up that.
Those small wins will always lead to big wins because it just puts you in the state of mind. I just picture the potato bug, roly-poly, whatever you want to call it, rolling up as soon as you touch it, unhapping that lizard part of your brain, and it's not, and people are really hard on yourselves. We're not medical professionals, but we can tell you were not a better drinker when you were younger. You just had a lot more time to sleep it off.
Yes. Yeah.
It was just no, you're not better at it. It's just you can sleep 12 hours. You can't sleep 12 hours anymore. Life's too busy.
Right? Okay. So I'm going to go there. And again, I feel like there needs to be something running across the ticker tape on Jen Slaski is not a doctor. She doesn't play one on TV. She's not being invited to the next season of Shrinking or Ted Lasso. Okay. She's just here and cares about human beings and wants to share what she knows because she wants people to live their best life. However, this drinking thing, I'm just going to go there. It is coming up more and more. And look, I feel just to name it, in life, everybody, once you get to a certain age, you start to hear it more and more where there's dry January, there's Movember, right? All these things. And it's really celebrated, which is great. But then in between there, you start to hear more and more people that are really struggling at a certain age to be I'm having trouble moderating. Yeah. And it's hard because nobody, and this can get serious. Again, a whole nother episode I'd be happy to do, but it's this notion where people are well, I'm not an alcoholic, but they can't stop. Or they'll say, why can't I just have one? And it turns to be this really shameful thing where people are why can't I discipline myself? I should. And what's the problem? And do I have a problem? Right? But at the end of the day, there is the difference between the physical addiction and the psychological addiction. And I know that word makes people bristle, but if you do a little research, what you find is over time, the longer, let's just call a spade, alcohol. Sorry, won't be getting any sponsorships from any, but it's addictive. The nature of it, your brain. Yeah. So if over time, as you have drank, even if you've drank responsibly, the nature of the chemical that is alcohol, the physical chemical composition of it in your brain is such that it is addictive. So if over time, even you're having trouble with the moderation, meaning not I wake up in the morning and I have to drink a handle of vodka, not that, but what is it that I keep going to happy hour and I want to have just one, but it always turns into at least 3. And I know I'm not going to feel good the next day, or I know I'm not going to sleep well, or I know that I'm going to feel bad about myself, or I know I'm going to get weepy or angry or whatever that thing is that happens when you've had one too many. But the whole deal is, in general, again, could do a deep dive. Your brain with alcohol the reward mechanism involved, that first 20 or 30 minutes, it feels the way your brain is expecting.
Yeah.
Like we do, because our brain is wired to believe I'm going to get a benefit. I'm going to either feel good or feel a sense of connection with my colleagues at the happy hour or with my partner watching a sunset, or man, I had a rough day. I'm going to feel like this exhale and this like kumbaya solve and whatnot. So the brain has been conditioned through years and years of this to believe there's a benefit, something good's going to happen. Well, it experiences that benefit for 20 to 30 minutes, but then over time, the longer you've drank, more quickly it drops. So it's like if it's going up, feels good, it drops, and the brain automatically is wired to say, no, I want to feel this way. So it is this really sneaky neurological mechanism, and it does make it really confusing, confounding, difficult. And I'm just going to name that more people than you realize, really high achieving professionals. It's a struggle that they have, and it's the ongoing white noise in the back of their head where they're wondering, what's the deal? Why is this happening? So yes, you could sleep it off before, but really your system neurologically, chemically, and how it interacts with alcohol has been changing over the years. So again, back to curiosity and compassion.
And always having grace with yourself. I think that is important when you're doing this kind of like looking in the mirror and trying to figure things out and doing a self-inventory. I think having grace with yourself as well too, of just like you said, we're just being curious, we're trying to figure things out. It doesn't have to be like I'm going to beat myself up. I always do this to myself. Have a little grace with yourself when you're trying to figure this stuff out too, especially when it comes to stuff we've been doing. We've been on autopilot for so long. So I think,
well, and culturally, not only that, like, let's be honest, like we're on autopilot and we live in a culture. And like I said, I like to name it to tame it, but all these things, like we live in a culture where it's like, I don't need that much sleep. Okay, right there. Or this culture where it's like, you need to be doing CrossFit and working out however many times a day if you really care about, like, right. Everything can feel so extreme, or it's like this culture where connecting over alcohol is ubiquitous, and so any number of these things, I think there's a mindfulness around you're right.
Right. Just taking the time to be curious and think about it and look around and self-inventory and then figure out like, I can moderate here, I can moderate there, and just slowly those small wins will lead to big wins. And I think in many different parts of your life, physically and mentally. Let's get... Go ahead.
And what I want to say there is I do believe with all of these things that we're talking about, when you can be curious and compassionate with yourself in some place of trust, right? Whether it's being open with somebody else in your life, whatever it is, or it could be with a counselor, it could be with a coach, but it could just be with a trusted colleague. It could be with your partner. It could be with a dear friend. It might be with a support group somewhere or just a general interest group. But the more that we as humans can connect with others and share a little vulnerably, more times than not, you're going to be received with a nod and a me too, and other people who are curious in similar ways or struggling in similar ways. And when you come together, there's that quote I love. It's an African proverb. It says, if you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go together. And I think that all these things we're talking about, and it's why the Spiceworks community, I think, is so powerful in any number of regards, because it's a coming together, not just about IT, but about any number of life things.
Oh, yeah. The number of similar interests, similar issues, similar battles that happen in a community, I think is why we all bond so well, because we are in the same boat, right?
Yeah.
So
keep me on track. You were about to keep.
I was going to say, I think on the next level. So I remember you said physiology, and I think level 3 was the self-esteem. What was the one between those two?
Security is the next.
Yes. Let's dig into that one.
I know we need to keep rolling along. And Jeff, if we need to record a separate section, we can. This is really important to me.
Yes.
I do something, just 2 other things I want to mention, and it'll be scratching this. You did mention the working out. Like at the end of the day, everybody knows that you feel better when you do it. Everybody, I think, is convinced they know that generally, yes, it is better for them. But kind of two things I do want to reiterate is, especially if you're someone that feels like you're struggling with like feeling depressed or depression. So many studies started out of Duke back in the day that these endorphins that you get from working out do make a difference. Okay. And I'm not saying that that is all that some people need. Like, I do want to honor and recognize that some people do get to certain levels of depression where medication is a bridge and a help and a necessity in that season. But exercise, it really, really is, and makes a difference. And there's a Netflix documentary called Stutz where Jonah Hill sits down and interviews his former therapist. And it's worth watching just in general.
Interesting. I haven't heard of that.
Yeah, but one thing that his therapist says, and his therapist was trained as a psychiatrist, and Stutt says that in his early days, he always wanted people to leave feeling a sense of hope, no matter what, especially if he thought they may never come back. And he would always make sure to tell people, get in your body. If you are depressed, if you are feeling hopeless and helpless or whatever it is, when we can get in our bodies, that is the truest sense of agency we feel. So even if it's, I'm waking up this morning or at lunchtime, I'm going for a walk. And if that's all you can do to start, it's getting into your body and doing something, because that is the way to signal to the body that like you are and do have control over some things. You do have agency. And that's kind of the really seed of where a sense of hopefulness and optimism can be re-sparked. So I share that to say, like, yes, some sort of physical, and it doesn't need to be you're training for a marathon, Ironman. You don't have to go every day. Get out of your head about it. Must be an hour. Just start where you are and just do something a little more, because it does make a difference. It also, exercise helps neurologically from the standpoint of neuroplasticity. You may hear about that, but that's how new neural pathways can start to get formed so that we can feel differently in our lives, so that we can start to have these new ways of being. But that's core to it. And then also the last thing I want to say on that physiological nature.
Yeah.
Nature. Get out in nature. If you're interested in this topic, it's been documented, scientific studies, like I think it's something like 5 hours a month is a dosage. And I hesitate, back to what I said, I don't want to put extra stress on people. You can parse that out, but there's a great book called The Nature Fix by Florence Williams. If you're interested in this at all, there are biorhythms and energy being in nature that they have shown electrically, physiologically, make a difference, that promote well-being. So if you're out doing your walk and you can do that outside or just at all, parse that 5 hours, that's going to help. And there's also a really great documentary out now. I think it's The Earthing. It's about earthing, but earthing is a thing as well where people think it's crazy, but it's basically that, like, getting your feet connected to the grass somehow, to the pavement, to the soil, is clinically proven to also have a whole host of well-being benefits, from cardiac to neurological to psychological. Again, could be a whole separate session on the why. If you're interested, check it out.
Well, I do feel like this generation has made the term touch grass a thing. Right. Yeah. That is a thing. So I do like that, appreciate that, understand it as IT professionals like ourselves. We realized under the graph, there's a networking closet that has all these different Ethernet cables connecting to each other and working together on there. So I think that electrical charge, we can kind of understand what's going on there, that there might be some kind of magnetic push. But on the working out thing, you know, as I was a kickboxing fitness instructor for a couple of years, so I can speak on that one big thing.
Of course you were, because Jeff Kreitler is the one that now at this point everybody feels really bad about their mental well-being. They're like, wait, how did you do that? And you were a professional wrestler and you managed to dial in your keep going, Jeff Kreitler.
But just for funsies, and I would remind everybody that everybody likes different flavors. This might not be for you. And there's so many different things that when you say working out doesn't have to involve, like you said, I'm going to do an hour of HIIT training and I'm going to be in the red and I'm going to learn how to walk on my hands and all that. And it's just like, no, it could be pickleball. It could be racquetball. It could just be you're walking your dog through the creek. It's something that you're not sitting.
Your body.
Yeah. It's just you're not sitting.
Wherever you're at, just move your body, really. Yes. And that's the thing. It could be just getting out and
trying different things too. But like you said, using I used to tell two things, and I probably learned it in wrestling. I remember it was just like motion is the lotion and flexibility is the fountain of youth. And the only way you can get either one of those is movement, so it doesn't have to be something intense. It could be something that's very accessible to anyone, and just find what your flavor is and then just do that. But you have to enjoy it, because if you don't enjoy it, that's why the treadmill is death for so many people, because it's really not that it's not that enjoyable. So how are you going to convince your body to do something that you're not really enjoying yourself? You're not going to want to do it.
Right. Well, and some people love it. I think that's the thing. Like my sister-in-law loves her treadmill elliptical in front of Emily in Paris. So that's when she turns on whatever her
she made it enjoyable.
She made it enjoyable. And so I think that's the treat, is experiment with those things. Like it might just be that's how you pair it with reconnecting with a friend or a colleague and saying, hey, we're going to meet at this time at this park and we're going to walk and talk, right? It could be that. It could be, and if that's what you need to do is have that accountability buddy where you meet at the yoga class or you meet at the gym or you meet at the park for the walk, whatever it might be. But just wherever you're at now, if this is the thing, like just start and just back to steps, just do a little more and just realize, especially if you're feeling mentally down and struggling, find a way to get back in your body at least a little more than you are today, because back to that emotion, think about emotions. When your body is in motion, your emotions will flow and process easier, and you will have a better chance at supporting your sense of overall well-being.
And I get it. And I watched somebody playing Frisbee golf in the park the other day, and it was very, very zen to watch, but they were moving and they were smiling, and it was exercise. It counts. I was like, that counts. Right. Yeah. It was just cool to watch. So let's get into the next level, because I do want to try to cover all of the tiers, if you will. So you said the next one is security, which I
can go, Greiler, I don't know about you and Maria, but I can actually I can go until 3:30. We're scheduled until.
Yeah, let's see how it feels.
Right. Okay. Yeah. Okay. So this one, there's a lot of different ways that we could approach this one, but the one that I feel like is most applicable to those that will be tuning in here has to do with two things. When we talk about safety, right? If you think we're at the bottom was physiological. So sure, this next level, like we do for mental well-being, need to feel a sense of a physical safety. Okay, so that can mean everything from having shelter, living in a neighborhood where we feel safe. When we're talking about exercising, like doing it in places, being in nature in places where we feel safe. Okay, so there is that very primal sense of safety there. It also applies to the relationships that we are in. Okay, we talk a lot now generally, like obviously in like your personal relationships, safety is obviously not about physical safety.
Yeah.
Also emotional safety. Like, are you in relationships with people you feel emotionally safe with? Are they honest? Do they support you in terms of growing as a human being? Do they celebrate you? Are they compassionate? Like that, and that doesn't mean that they're saying everything about you is great. Like we all need to grow, right? But we all know those people in our lives that encourage us, right? Maybe call us out on our things where we know we do need to make some changes. to be in a better space, whatever that means. But so that notion of psychological safety in our closest relationships, and specific to this group, psychological safety at work. I think these things become buzzwords, and then certain lower IQ folks will start rolling their eyes and be like, oh, all this woo-woo stuff. But things become cliche sometimes for a reason, and it's because it's talked about a lot. So psychological safety at work, do you trust your manager and your leaders? Do their actions line up with their words? What are the values at your company? And do you align with them? Do you feel like people act in a way that feels aligned with you and your value system, right? That all kind of filters into this notion of psychological safety at work. And then obviously there's that reality of like, do you feel like your job is secure? Like if you're feeling like constantly like, and I know this is tough with AI, like this is, I want to say it's in the room, but
AI anxiety a real
not
thing?
talking about it? Yes, absolutely. And it's crazy. So many of you are on these projects that we laugh, because if you laugh, you'll cry, but it's like, okay, wait, whoa, this is about figuring out how to use AI to make me dispensable.
Yeah.
And it's like, we get it, it's innovation, it's efficiencies, but it is a complex thing that I want to name that is happening right now for so many professionals out there.
Oh, yeah. It's everywhere. This is the first time, and we talked about this before, and, tapping into the marketing side of your life, we've heard the buzzwords. We've seen them all. We've seen cloud. We've seen SaaS. We've seen all this stuff kind of come and go that really felt like they just were very almost niche affecting. This one is like mainstream news. There isn't anybody that that isn't in some kind of work life that hasn't been touched by it, affected by it, figuring it out. News is screaming at us, price of memory and processors and hard drives are all going wild because it's creating a very frantic energy all around us because of that. Yes. And we have to survive that. And like you said, and this is one of the, hierarchy tiers that we have to feel like we're feeling very insecure about it, even whether we like it or don't like it. It's just a tool, but it's got to be hitting us at some level of creating some kind of insecurity where you're saying now it's just like security is very important for your well-being.
Yeah. Yeah. And so I think it's just very important to name it. Like I'm an optimist. And what that basically means, in my world is whenever there's something happening, like I believe there's always something generally that I can do that can have a positive impact on a situation that I am in. I'm not saying I can control it or solve it, but that to me is what optimism is being able to at least find a step forward, maybe not see the whole path, right? However, even being an optimist, I think that we're doing our people a real disservice if we don't give some space around acknowledging that it's natural if you're sometimes feeling anywhere from anxious to like downright maybe some days even paralyzed by this, because we don't know where this is going and nobody can promise you what's going to happen.
We'd love to have some kind of predictability, right? You can look at patterns and you can say, oh, we've seen this with .com and we're waiting for that bubble to burst and then everything is going to get back to a level of normal. But this one feels so big. It's like, I don't know, the level of normal might be different. It might not be the normal you expect as we find that buoyancy and figuring it out. So is there something we can do to have us like a tool that gives us what fortress of solitude for us to give that security?
I mean, that's the thing right now. No, there's no tool. The only tool I think right now that is healthiest is what we talk to, connecting with others, to name it, to tame it. That's the closest thing, to be able to name it and be able to talk about it.
Yeah.
I think that there is, to a certain degree, this is not a misery loves company thing, but to a certain degree, like there's virtue in knowing you're not alone. Other people are having concerns. And then at the end of the day, you get back to, Okay. And so today, here we are. What can we control? What can we do today? And that is what gets us back into that mode in some ways of Stutz. Like, okay, like how we reclaim some sense of hopefulness today is getting back to what we can do today in the present. Look, I think that there is all sorts of also collaboration that can be done around, well, if we don't know, what does this mean for how I plan for my future, for my career? We don't have time, for that now. But I think it's making space for these conversations. Don't avoid them. Like what we resist persists.
Yes.
So if you're in the fear, if you're having this thought, like trust, I'm just here telling you, everybody else is having it. Find a group of like-minded, like-hearted, safe spaces where you can go and have this conversation. And where you want to land is, okay, and so what can I control today? What can I go do today?
And you talked about that, at your Spiceworks keynote last year. It's just like why the Spiceworks community kind of like 'cause nobody planned that, like, we're going to have this place for us to all congregate. And, it's turned into a support group for a lot of us because we're like minded. But I didn't realize it was a level of support group, right? It's just like you hear that as almost like a, whether it's AA or something like that, it always had the mental health part of it, but I didn't actually put two and two together till you just said that, where it's just like to name it is to tame it, and a lot of times to name it, you need a few people around it to say, "Oh, this is happening to me too." "Oh, you too?" And then all of a sudden, you're figuring it out together, what it is, and how we're going to deal with controlling the controllables to at least say, well, at least we have this to kind of give us a safe space. Does that seem accurate?
Yeah, I think you're right. I think that's human connection, right? It starts with the courage. And courage, I said this before, courage is rooted in the Latin for heart. C-O-U-R is for heart, right? So it's having some courage to just be open-hearted and authentic about what's on your mind, what's on your heart. Like, hey, like this is what's going on for me, what I'm struggling with, what I can't, right? Like, again, when you find trusted others, they're going to respond and you're going to be met with a lot of head nods, a lot of me toos, or at the very least, a lot of like, man, like, tell me more, right? Like
Yeah.
that's not in that level. That's the thing. It's important to find those people. That gets to that next level of Maslow's hierarchy of needs relative to connection. And I know I'm taking us there like that. The last thing I'll say that again could be a separate thing on security, financials. It's a reality.
Yeah.
Like feeling financially secure, which again is a whole big topic that is also inextricably linked to this sphere around AI. Let's name that. So, but when these things happening, that next level of connection, starts at home, obviously, and at home and in your neighborhood, like your nearest and dearest, like those people, those relationships being nourishing, being able to feel like your authentic self with those people so that you can be real and that you can, feel seen as you are authentically, feel celebrated, feel encouraged for areas where you need to grow, right? None of us are perfect. Like we're going to fumble, we're going to stumble, we're going to make mistakes, but people in your inner circle that like can be there to help you when you recognize that and say you're sorry and say you want to grow. And like, there's that's really, really important.
Yeah.
And your work, your neighbors, your community, the people that are at your gym, the people that are at your church, the people that are at the local coffee shop that you go to work from, or on Saturdays at Coffee Bob's, right?
Right.
Also at work, your colleagues and your communities like in Spiceworks, and finding a way to curate multiple avenues of that connection for this village of support, to your point, Jeff.
Yeah.
That's
and I feel like, this has changed since 2020 when we all separated, and now we're having, I feel like we're all working our way back together to find that support, because a lot of people, and probably still are affected by that struggle, that they felt alone. Like they needed to, like, I need to go to the office, because they didn't realize maybe that was their only form of support group that they had, was, bumping into each other, or going out to lunch together, or having fun at the office when you aren't working, We lost a lot of that, and a lot of people are still trying to figure out their way back. So it's great that we have like these recommendations of finding those small wins, like join a community about like Spiceworks if you're into tech, or find another community that you're doing it, not the toxic ones, but also just finding those like-minded people. I think it would be really helpful.
Yeah. Well, and I think a couple of things there. Yeah. Like it can be like, even like, locally, like, it's the yoga studio you choose to go to, or the hiking group, or like, the dog park, right? There's all these things that it can be like, from the personal to the professional. I think you named something really important. Like, I mean, we all need to complain sometimes, because it's sort of like it's energy. You're just kind of trying to burn it off and like, blah, like get it out there. And you can't stay there. If you dwell there and that becomes toxic, be really tuned into who you're spending that time with. You want to have people that like you can shake your head and be like, yeah, me too. And that when you leave, you feel lighter and a sense of generativity, not just like womp womp, like this sucks, nothing sucks. Like, there's a place for that, so you can feel like connected and be mindful of that. But I also think it's really important, and I talked about this at Spice World, be thoughtful and intentional about curating some form of regular in-person connection with other human beings, not just because it sounds like a nice idea, but neurologically speaking, there is a chemical release called oxytocin that when we connect with other human beings in person, especially, that gets released, that is directly related to our feeling of happiness, our feeling, it's the bonding, it's called the bonding, basically hormone. And it's what gets released when a parent first holds their baby. Evolutionarily speaking, it's meant to bond so that we, protect and can survive, but it exists for all humans. And it's back to like, the closer and closer you get, the more of it that gets released. And what I mean is it can happen. It can happen online if you have a good interaction.
Right.
But it gets amplified when you're in person. It gets amplified when you shake hands, when you high five, like skin to skin. It gets amplified when you hug. Even more amplified if you hug for 5 to 10 seconds. So there's all these levels, and that's a beautiful biological design, because we're wired to connect as mammals, as humans. And the more that we can be thoughtful about having a healthy amount of that connection in our life with safe people.
No, that makes sense. And it just hit me. That's like really trippy. When you said that, it was just like, even just like the high five of like, who even came up with like, what's the history of understanding shaking hands that is like of the way of like sealing a deal or bond or some kind of arrangement or agreement came from putting two hands together, linking two hands like that. Is that like the energy exchange is somehow kind of like the blood brother, blood sister type thing, the physical part?
I want to research that more. Yeah, right? Like how, and all like culturally, like you think of like the French culture where it's like the two, like, right? Like there's something about this like connection. And I don't know, like I think about two rams when they come together and like locking, like, so I've got some more research to do. You've given me homework.
Find out about the Eskimo kisses that they do with noses, like, but they're still touching that's happening.